So, just to let you know as well, when I selected the questions, they were all folded over, so I had no way of knowing who has written the questions, so there's no bias in that way. This is the first time that I've seen the names of the people who've actually written the questions. So, the first one on the top of the list is from June, I think that's Tweeny, and this is about the proposed closure of the libraries. June, if you could pop your hand up there. Thank you. Thank you, June.
Why is it that with the proposed closure of libraries, BS6, BS8 and BS9 will be without a local library with Henleys serving the whole of the area? And the thing is that Henleys is not easily accessible by bus, certainly from BS9 and other areas, and not everyone has a car or can walk that distance.
Thank you for that. I do realise that libraries are an interesting, contentious issue, and I am somebody who's absolutely devoted to libraries. I think that they're a vital institution and something that we should build on rather than in any way destroy. You say closure. We are giving options for people to come forward with proposals for the community running of libraries. We've had a huge amount of enthusiasm, I know, in Clifton for taking over the library and from various individuals and groups. And so I do think there is a prospect over the 4 months, because I've extended the consultation, because it was quite rightly pointed out, although statutory consultation would only be 6 weeks, we allowed 3 months. I've extended it because of the general election and councillors being concerned about that, so that it is 8 weeks before, actually it's now probably less than that, before the election and 8 weeks after it, so that we can have proper responses and, get engaged. Do tell us all the concerns you've got, but also look at how you might work locally with groups, with us, and there will be some really positive engagement. We're not just going to wait for the engagement. We're going to have drop-ins. We're going to have public meetings in those libraries. I think there's one in Wick Road tonight, actually, and where the local MP and the assistant mayor are taking part. So don't make any presumptions. What I'm absolutely determined is that we end up with a network of libraries that are more than the current library on average. There are some really excellent libraries. I've been, as an architect, involved in the conversion of libraries in the past, where there's been the trebling of the take-up or the use of a library as a result of its transformation. Not in Bristol, but I will happily cite where they are if anybody asks. And so I do think we ought to approach this with more hope than fear about the future. Now, interestingly, you didn't name the one library I would have added to that is the Central Library. The Central Library is excellent. And the Central Library is a huge resource. If I use a library, I tend to use the Central Library, even though I live south of the river. And I think that if you think about it, both Redland and Clifton are pretty close to the Central Library, and it is so much better resource than you can ever get in a branch library. I mean, it's absolutely brilliant in terms of research and lending. So we are open. We are taking this extremely seriously. I have increased the extent and depth of the consultation, and please don't assume that just because a library is not in the Group 1 and 2 that it necessarily means closure of that building. It probably means change, but I think that is good. When you have a look at least 4 of those libraries are inadequate in many ways, and so whether it's closure or change, yes, in any place in the city, a good library to go to.
Can I just ask, because libraries are a really contentious, big issue at the moment. The consultation period has been extended. Can I just take a quick straw poll for how many people perhaps have actually taken part in the consultation process? So, and probably not even half, I would imagine.
No, but that's good, though.
But
I think that's a reasonable proportion. If you consider, at the moment, and I think this is a shame, that only 6% of people in the city actually borrow books, ever, you know, during a year. Only 6% of people borrow books. Only about 15% of people actually engage with their libraries in any way. Interestingly, in Clifton, the biggest feedback I've had is the threat to the loss of Pilates. It's, you know, there is, maybe that says something about Clifton, I don't know, but it's, you know, I don't want to label Pilates, I'm sure I should do it. But, I think you here is an audience that is above average in terms of the use of libraries. And thank you for participating. The more that participation we get in that consultation, the better.
Okay. Thank you, Gina. The next question, unfortunately, they've not put their name on it, so I'm going to read it out. It also does reflect another question which has come in. So, rent prices in Bristol are out of control. Professionals in their 30s are living in substandard shared housing as they can't afford to buy. What can be done? And to tie into that question, Thomas, I think it's Myers, is asking, is your vision of 750 affordable homes a year a challenge enough when the 20 to 30-year-old population is set to increase by more than 1,000 per year? Should we be setting our sights higher? Lots of issues there around housing. What's your response, George?
Who was the first questioner?
I don't know. Does anyone recognise the first question as theirs?
I thought that Okay. So, is the 750 enough? And the first question was?
First question, rent prices in Bristol are out of control.
I absolutely agree. And, I mean, something I was saying this morning is that if you are poor or challenged in a relatively rich city like Bristol, you're more challenged than you are if you're in a poorer city where housing costs less, either by rent or by purchase. And it does mean that you're left with less money for the other essentials of life. And I have absolutely every sympathy for people who are challenged by the levels of rent. And it is something that concerns me. I'm not, you know, I can't control beyond council housing. And actually we are starting to build council housing again, and that's good news. I'm a great believer in council housing. We own 28,000 council homes across the city, and while we're only building a relative trickle, we will have the capability of building hundreds of new homes across the city that will add to the council house estate. And,
can I just ask then, George, how many affordable homes? I mean, you set it out at the beginning of your campaign to be mayor. You set out that affordable homes were important to you. By the end of your 4 years, I know things take a while to build up, but at the end of the 4 years, how many of these 750 affordable homes a year do you think you'll have built?
Well, we won't be building 750 affordable homes in this current year. And even if we were, that wouldn't be enough. We should be building double that. We are restricted to a certain extent. We're restricted by the way that we're allowed to fund new housing. There's something called the Housing Revenue Account, we're limited to the amount we can invest in new homes by central government. It's one of the reasons why I want devolution to the city region, which we're actively talking about, because we can be much more in control about where we invest money. It's an investment, it's not spending, it's an investment when we build new homes. We get a return on it. It's a good business for the city. We should be doing it. And there are two restrictions. One is the level of money available, and the other is the land. And I'm determined that we release more land to enable us to build more council homes. So we are falling short of some of our targets, but we are hugely improving on what went before. And there was, and now, of course, with a revival in homes building in general because of the economy, we're able to provide more affordable homes on the back of some of the housing developments, the commercial, the private housing developments that are across the city. And I'm absolutely determined that we do achieve that. There are too many developers using every excuse in the world to try and get out of the providing the right share of affordable homes within those developments. And what I'm also determined about is that we don't end up with poor doors, that we end up with properly integrated housing developments that don't distinguish between those that are on market rents or market sales and those that are on affordable, which typically is about 80% of market, which is still much too high for some people.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anything, Steve, that you would want to add to that? I've got a row of extremely brilliant officers here who know the answers much better than I do, but if they don't want to add to my answer, I might have got it roughly right.
At this point as well, I will just bring in that we've had some very specific questions asked, which I've put to one side because I think the service directors at the front here would be much better placed to ask. One of them is about the number 36 bus, the second is warm at Bristol, and another one is about bus services in the evening. So if any of those questions are yours, please come to me at the end and I'll put you in touch with the right service director to ask so they can answer those quite specific questions for you. So moving on now.
And if somebody could remind me which route the 36 bus takes would help too.
That would, yeah. Callington Road Hospital.
Right.
So... St Anne's Witherwood.
St Anne's Witherwood, okay.
So the next question is from Paul Wheeler. Paul, if you could pop your hand up for me. Paul, lovely, thank you. The gentleman's just coming with the microphone behind you.
Hello, Paul.
Good evening, George. My question is, 6 months ago you announced that all City Council staff would be paid at least the living wage. At that time, you also announced that council officers would investigate the introduction of a requirement for the council's contractors to pay their staff the living wage. When can we expect that requirement to be brought in?
Well, Paul, and I absolutely welcome your question and your interest in this subject. In practice, we've been paying the living wage ever since I've been in office. The difference is that we're now consolidating it so that it also gets reflected in the pensions. What we were doing was paying it in arrears as a sort of catch-up at the end of each year, if we could afford it. Now we shall afford it, and we are doing it, even though we're in more difficult times in terms of the amount of money available to us. What we're also doing alongside that is we're having discussions with the Living Wage Foundation about the potential for signing up to their charter, but I can't say that we're there yet. And the other thing we're doing is asking that every contract, every tender includes what we'd call a market tender, which is a current market tender that people would enter in without a living wage condition, and a living wage tender, so that we can start assessing what the difference would be, and if there was little difference, probably then go for the living wage option. But we're in a difficult position at the moment of actually not knowing what the difference is, because it's very easy to sign bits of paper, but what I don't want to do is sign a bit of paper that means that the city is signed up to an extra $5 million a year or something at a time when we've had to cut a huge amount. And we knew what it would cost us when we entered into a living wage, adopting the living wage for our own staff. We simply don't know what it would cost, because we don't know exactly how many people are on minimum wage, for instance, in these other firms. But when we go for the arena tenders and things like that, there will be a question about living wage, about apprenticeships, about local labour. So we'll be looking at all those things and improving on all those fronts. I'm absolutely determined, for instance, that we get as much local employment in our major contracts as well, and as much in the way of local apprenticeships. And we have a very good apprenticeship scheme within the, known as on-site, within the City Council too, working with the construction industry.
Okay, thank you. The next question I've got is about 20 mile per hour speed restrictions, George. And there are several
No
here.
jokes.
No jokes, no jokes. Jeremy Clarkson's gone. If I can just ask Gillian Parker, please. Lovely, thank you.
Hello there.
Hi, Gillian.
We just had a 20 mile an hour speed limit imposed on our main road in Frenchay. Now, is it law that people keep to this 20 mile an hour or not? Because nobody is taking any notice of it.
Where there are French, I mean, are you Frenchay within the city, within the city boundary or outside it?
No, in Bristol.
Yeah, because there are some areas where there are 20 miles an hour with a green circle, and those are advisory. Right. Where they're a red circle, it's a legal requirement.
Right.
There is a difference, though, as to whether all of them are being being monitored or not. As with 30 miles an hour, you'll never know quite. But there have been some prosecutions, fines, or whatever you call them, for people going between 20 and 30, so going over 20 but not going over 30 within the city. So watch out. There's somebody about who is checking.
No, I just wondered if they're going to put up speed cameras or something like that.
No, they're not.
It's not law.
There are some speed cameras, but they tend to be on the radial routes that are still 30 or 40.
Yes.
So most of the radial routes in the city, where most of the speeding, like on the Portway, and that was 35 miles an hour in a 30 mile an hour area, and I'm going for a speed awareness course, and I think that will be good for me, and I hope it'll be good for the city, because, you know, the more I'm aware of the danger of speeding, the more other people will be aware. So I hope I've given you a reasonable answer to that. But red circles, watch out. I mean, to be honest, and I'm going to be absolutely open here, I think if you're going 22, 23, you're not in real danger, but if you're going 25, 27, you probably are. Okay.
I'm going to bring in a question here. I think it's from Peter Musgrove. And this is really interesting because, yes, 20 miles an hour, we all know the safety, but he said, you're driving home at 1 a.m. in the morning, what speed will you be driving? Now, obviously, the 20 mile an hour has been brought in for safety, but 1 o'clock in the morning, is it really something that people should be adhering to at that time?
Well, I think it's a good question. You know, you're not going to have a lot of children around at 1 o'clock in the morning. You're not, you know, the schools are not going to be affected. I mean, I think it's a good question. I had the same question about traffic lights as well, as to whether, you know, taxi drivers, who are my best friends, and I say that honestly, I get on really well with taxi drivers, although they might grumble about me to you when you're in the back of their cab. They have said, why on earth have we got all the traffic lights and the and 20 miles an hour at between 2 and 6 in the morning?
You're avoiding the question. I asked the question.
Yeah.
Just half a second.
Pembroke Road, 1 o'clock in the morning. Would you do 20 miles an hour on that road?
Would I? Oh, I see. It was a personal question. Well, I would definitely try to. I mean, Pembroke Road. Absolutely. I mean, I do try to keep to speed limits.
Do you think? Excuse me a minute, Peter. Do you think it's something that you should be looking at? That yes, I think probably a lot of people accept that the safety limits for 20 miles an hour are a good thing at certain times, but at other times they make no sense whatsoever.
It's quite difficult for us to publicise the. You know, it'd be complicated to have 20 mile an hour signs that said. You know, between 2 and 7, it's 30.
Thank you, Peter. Just a moment. Just please let George just finish.
Sorry, I misunderstood your question. The answer is, I will do everything I can to keep the speed limits, especially now. I do confess that I have broken the speed limit on my bike going down 1 or 2 hills in Bristol, but that is, according to the police, permissible.
Okay. So I'm going to move on now. The next question's from Martin Howard, please. Martin? Martin's at the front here. Thank you.
Thank you. My question's about the future of Bristol, and it'd be interesting to hear you describe and to outline what you see a sustainable Bristol would look like, maybe in terms of housing, travel, work, and so on. So what's your vision, Victoria?
Wow, what an opportunity. And giving you a brief answer is going to be difficult. I want a city that is safe, that's resilient to future threats, that contributes, there's a good city that contributes to the world. And I think a good city is one that shares its experiences. And like a city where people feel that they're very much part of it, so that they're able to communicate. I mean, I absolutely see with the Bristol is Open project, which is a big project that we're sharing with the university, it's a joint venture, that we'll be able to get much more e-democracy. We'll be able to get much more immediate response to issues, which we'll be able to measure the mood of the city. I'm thinking quite far ahead. I would like to see a city that is absolutely clean in terms of its air quality, a healthy, so I think everything should be driven about having a city where people feel healthy and happy. It's the people, stupid. It's not about the infrastructure. The infrastructure is only there in order to serve the people. And I say that as an architect. And I think it's really important that we remember that buildings and whatever infrastructure is there is not for the city, it's for the people, it's for the citizens. There's no limit to the distance I would like to go in making this a green, clean, healthy city where people feel safe to walk and cycle, and children feel safe to walk and cycle to school, and a city that we all as leaders of look through the eyes of children, because if you make a city that's good for children, you make it good for us all. And I find that children are much more open to this change than an awful lot of adults are. Children tend to judge that change out of hope rather than out of fear. I would like to see a city that is as green as possible, literally as well as environmentally. So I don't think anybody would mistake that my aim is one of having an environmentally friendly city that is diverse, that is that there's a really good relationships between all our various communities, between people of all colours and religions. I think there's a huge room for improvement there, and it's something that we've all got to work on. I think I've given you a long enough answer, but you get a rough idea of the utopia that I'm aiming for in a wonderful city, but quite a tricky one.
Thank you. So, this utopia that you're talking about and this vision, I think the next question is something that hopefully will tie in with that. And I'm going to ask Ellie Barrett-Rees to ask this question. There you go.
As a sixth form student studying politics, due to the last mayoral election turnout being very low, what does the council plan to do to increase political participation, especially amongst young people?
Well, young people are brilliant at participation. Young people in this city have just elected a new youth council and 2 new youth mayors. And the youth council they elected, there was 10,000 this year, it was 9,000 last year, it was 8,000 the year before, the 3 years that I've been in office while this has happened. And I've only been in office for 2 and a bit years, but I happen to have had those 3 elections. They have thrown up a really brilliant youth council that it reflects the colour of the religions, the diversity in this city, much more than the grown-up council does. I think they have a lot to teach us. I think they have a lot to teach the Bristol City Council. And I think about, it's been about a third BME. They've got people with learning difficulties on it. It's absolutely wonderful. It's a real diverse representation, and I want to involve them more in the decision-making, or at least the influencing of the city. And I think they give me hope for the future. And so I think we need to hold them up as an example as to how we get more people involved. And the schools are they're the entry system, really, for democracy. And so let's work with all the schools to encourage more. I hope it's 12,000 next year, 15,000 the year after. And I'm sure that will then pay dividends when it comes to the wider local elections. I think another thing that's going to increase it is that when I came into office, we had elections by thirds across the council, 3 out of every 4 years. Well, nobody knew whether their councillor was up for election or not. So it was, and the media didn't take great interest because it was only a little bit of the council getting elected. Now, in 2016, for the first time, we're going to have all-out elections for the whole council, all 70 members of council, and the mayor. That's going to be challenging. That is going to be transformational, and that will enable, I think, the media to take more interest, and for us to get a bigger turnout.
Can I just ask you very quickly, Ellie, is there anything you've heard tonight, do you think that is going to encourage more young people to get involved in politics?
Yeah, I think so, and just a more general awareness, especially in schools, because I know as I take politics, and a few of my friends do, we're obviously more interested, but it's just the general feeling amongst some of my friends.
Do you have any suggestions on how we can encourage more people to get involved in politics and democracy?
I think if more people came into our schools, then it was more part of what we had to learn rather than just optional.
Absolutely right.
Thank you.
And people seeing that it makes a difference, I think, is really important. There used to be a bit of graffiti up in St Paul's years ago that said, "Don't vote because whoever you vote for, the council gets in." And that's not very constructive. But it said something about people's perception. I like to feel that it might be a bit different now.
Okay.
And even those who don't like me, go out and vote.
Thank you for that question, Ellie. I'm going to ask Brendan Murphy now, please. Brendan's at the back. Thank you.
Hi, George.
Hi, Brendan.
I'm from 365 Bristol, so we run a little website in Bristol. A lot of people have asked us, and we're wondering, there's a lack of transparency regarding allocation of funding and spending around Bristol 2015 and the European Green Capital Award for Bristol. Why is the Mayor not insisting that freedom of information requests are adhered to on this subject?
Well, now, I've been asked that a lot. There isn't a lack of transparency. There's been a really good process that I have been as hands-off as it is possible to be. I didn't set up the process. I've not been involved in the process. And we selected 4 people to run and judge the process. One from UWE, one from the City Council, one from an independent in terms of not being part of one of the organisations or institutions in Bristol. That was for the major grants. For the medium-sized grants, we gave Quartet the job of issuing grants, and for the smaller grants, and there were more of those, we gave the neighbourhood partnerships the job of issuing grants. What I was absolutely determined to do in what is a relatively short time in terms of us being awarded European Green Capital is to deliver during this year. And if you go through the sort of processes that you have to go through in the City Council, we wouldn't have delivered this year. That is why we set up an independent company. That independent company has a voluntary board that is spread across the city in terms of its interest, but naturally it tends to attract people from people like the Avon Wildlife Trust or Sustrans, or people who do have an interest in the environment. But it's been the cleanest possible process, but the point of having an independent company is that it's not lumbered with all the bureaucratic conditions that we as a city council have, and as a result it is able to deliver.
Can you see, though, why people may feel that there is this lack of transparency, this perceived lack of transparency, as you put it?
Well, I know there's been talk about it, but, I think there's an element of conspiracy theory behind it. Freedom of information costs us a fortune. We have limited funds to deliver good limited funds in terms of better than any other green capital so far. I don't want us to be using a large proportion or a significant proportion of those funds on freedom of information unnecessarily. That's when we don't have to. I think everybody would understand that it's a matter of getting the balance right. There is freedom of information in terms of the council's involvement in 2015. There is not freedom of information in terms of the company itself. And the other reason is that we have major commercial sponsors who would not want to be, and quite understandably, would not want to suddenly, by their involvement in European Green Capital, to be subjected to Freedom of Information Act, which only applies to public bodies.
Okay. I can see a couple of hands going up. I am just going to say I will throw open the floor at the end. I just want to get through the questions that I have selected so far. Okay. Is it a really quick question? It could. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
I appreciate the rhetoric that you've just given us, but don't you think the people of Bristol have got the right to know how much it has actually cost us to be involved in this green project?
Well, I tell you exactly how much it's cost us. It's cost the city about 1.2 million. That is an investment. 200,000 of that is going towards the One Tree Per Child project. The rest of the money has come 7 million from the government. There's about 3 million in real money and in kind from the principal sponsors. There's more from other sponsors. So we're talking about an investment of about 11 million that's cost the city 1.2 million.
So what is the problem?
Sorry, just very, very quickly. Just so, is there anywhere where people can actually see these figures? Just to finish the conversation.
That's never been hidden. That is public.
So where can people find on the council website?
I don't know if it's on the council website.
And so what is the problem with the freedom of information being free?
Well, I'll tell you what it is. I'll tell you what the problem is. And it's an understandable one. For instance, for the strategic grants, we had, I think it was about £8.5 million worth of value of applicants for 1.something million, 1.2 million of grants.
I'm going to stop this here because
I just want to say, there were a lot of unhappy people who didn't get grants, but that's
there are figures being bandied around. Yeah. I'm going to ask maybe if somebody could find me where the information can come from so that I can give that to you at the end of the evening. Is that okay? Because I'm going to move on to some really important questions, but I will make it my business to find out where you can find that information from. Okay, so the next question is from Paula Bentley. Paula? Oh, Paula's over here. Thank you. This may be something you have to refer on.
What?
This may be something you have to refer on, but...
Hi, George.
Hello,
my question,
Paula.
Hi. It's about perinatal mental health in Bristol. Are you aware that Bristol's current perinatal mental health strategy or pathway is not working? No. How do you propose to improve it? Is there a specific budget? Are there timescales to implement a revised strategy that's going to work and going to make women better?
I think this is one I'm definitely going to hand over to officers. I'm so sorry about that, Paula, but I'm not aware.
So you're not aware?
Sure, I should be.
Okay. Well, you're on the mental board of
But I'm
health.
going to ask Mike. I'm going to ask
The Health and Wellbeing Board, though, you're chairman. Surely you've got to know about it.
I'm going to ask Mike Hennessy to answer.
Okay. That's really disappointing. I thought you were the chairman.
I don't know the answer to everything. Paul, I've always said I don't know the answer to everything.
We let Mike talk, and then if you've got any questions after that, maybe after Mike has talked, then we can bring up the discussion again.
I'm Mike Hennessy. I'm Service Director for Adult Services within the City Council. Perinatal mental health care is clearly an important issue for Bristol and our partners within Bristol Clinical Commissioning Group and Avon and Wiltshire Mental Health Partnership Trust. We do have a strategy group looking at the issue of improving quality of care for pregnant women and women who have just had their babies and their families, and supporting them better with childbirth. We know that the period around birth can be very stressful and difficult for women with mental ill health, and not only in trying to improve the day-to-day routine services, but also including perinatal mental health for women in terms of crisis care, so that when people do find things difficult, even at short notice, all of those services are in a position to better respond to the real difficulties and traumas that some women and their families can experience, to make sure they get the best care possible. It's a tough job, it's a partnership job, and we are working with, as I say, Health and the Mental Health Partnership Trust to make sure we deliver the best quality perinatal care we can.
Okay, Mike, can I just start?
Is there a specific budget?
Because Paula did ask a couple of really specific points here. Is there a specific budget, and are there timescales to implement a revised strategy?
I think there are. I don't know about the specific budget, Paula, but I know there are timescales to implement a specific strategy. After the meeting, I'm very happy to give you my details or take yours, and I can give you all that information, and we'll make it available as well through the website.
Paula, can I just say I've only been chair of a joint chair of the Health and Wellbeing Board for 6 months, which is I find fascinating, challenging. There are a hell of a lot of issues that come up. This has not come up during that 6 months. I'm very happy to bring this issue to the Health and Wellbeing Board and to try and get the answers and raise the profile of it within the Health and Wellbeing Board.
We were going to ask if you could get it put on your agenda. There's a few of us here that feel very passionately about it, and we're working in the third-party sector to help mothers, and we just want to be involved.
But I'm very, I'm aware of the issue. I'm not aware of the answers.
So we've opened those channels. So Paula, maybe you could talk to Mike afterwards. And I know from the questions that we had in, there's a lot of interest and concern about this. So he's here and he's ready to talk to you.
Well, you can't get a better answer than I'm going to take it to the Health and Wellbeing Board.
Okay, so the next question is from Liz Curtin. Liz? Oh, a kid, I'm sorry, thank you. The microphone's just coming up the aisle.
What would you say to people who accuse you of disregarding democratic processes, particularly in regard to the introduction of residence parking zones?
I'll tell them they were wrong.
Based on?
I've listened. I mean, I have to take some strategic decisions based on. Democracy isn't just asking people exactly what they want, and you will judge your decisions totally out of people's fears. There's got to be a mixture of leadership and listening. And the other way round, I'd put it. I have listened and I have led. And what is absolutely clear is in all the areas where we've implemented residence parking, there's a recognition from some of the people who were opposed to it beforehand that it has made a massive improvement to their environment and to their convenience. So,
in what way is the glazing?
Just one moment, please.
In terms of their ability to park, in terms of the safety in the area, in terms of the general the general order of the area, and the fact that the money that comes out of residence parking eventually goes into to better provision of public transport.
I am going to bring up one thing here because...
Can I, put a supplementary thing to that? just before,
Yes,
is that all right? Just
yes,
to
of
whip
course,
in?
yeah.
Because earlier on in the questions, you really encourage people to take part in the consultation in the libraries. People have taken part in consultations and petitions and protests against the residents' parking zones, and you've still ignored them and gone with what you want. You have, because you've put them in place when people have very clearly said they don't want them. So what faith do we have as a city that you're actually going to listen to what people say when you don't? You encourage people to do consultations when you don't.
Let's let George talk now.
I listen very clearly. I listen to the quiet voices as well as to the loud voices. And I can tell you, I don't know which area you're in. Which area you live in.
Does that matter?
Yeah.
Why?
Which area do you live in?
Why does that matter?
I want to know which residence parking zone you're talking
George,
about.
I think
I'm talking about all of them as a whole and as a democratic
Do you live
principle.
in one of them?
I live in Bristol.
Do you live in one of the residents?
I'm not comfortable being interrogated. It's your question time.
I'm going to stop the batting of
Where do you live, George?
Here. I'm going to stop the
I
batting
know
of
where
forwards
she's
here,
coming
George.
from.
Thank
I know
you.
where you're coming from.
But there is one question which has come up on, obviously lots of questions in RPs there, but Mark Moran asked, what does the Mayor have to say to people who are being forced to change jobs as a direct result of him imposing RPZs across Bristol? That's someone who's saying that actually this isn't great for us. It may be great for the residents, as you say, but it's not great for the people who are working.
I think there are very few real factual incidents. I think there are an awful lot. I think there are an awful lot of. I mean, for instance, today I got somebody saying that because of residents parking, they might have to close their shop in Boyce's Avenue. The fact is that Boyce's Avenue has had controlled parking for a long time. And most of the businesses in Boyce's Avenue thrive, and the only closure I know of is because somebody was retiring. So, I think it's very easy to use other reasons for the closure of a business as a stick to beat me with. And well, the point is that he cannot any longer drive in the area and use a residential area as a car park. That is the point. And it's quite right that he can't. And he can, if he's able, he can get on his bike as I do every day as an old man, and I go up all the hills. So thank you very much.
I'm going to... excuse me a moment. Excuse me a moment. Sir, please, could you sit down? Sir. Okay. Sir, if you would sit down. Sir. Okay. Sir, do you know, we are going to open the floor at the end. We are going to open the floor at the end. Please calm down, sir. Thank you. Okay. I'm just going to quickly bring in a question here on that. Gareth Richards asks, what public transport improvements have you made other than more buses to encourage people not to drive to work?
Well, we are making huge public transport improvements. I mean, what actually is quite interesting is that since I came into office, the buses have improved in regularity in terms of being on time from 72% to 82%. And that was a recent figure. I think it would be much higher. I don't think it's good enough. And I think the perception is that the buses are often late. I have to say, in the last 3 buses that I've taken, they've all been on time, but I understand that the perception is that they're often late.
Okay, but what about other than more buses? What else are you going to do?
More buses, more drivers. You've got to recognise that the buses are deregulated. I'm not in charge of the buses, but I've had very useful discussions with the first group. Hang on. Yeah, I know, but public transport is buses in this city.
So have you?
All right.
Oh, okay.
What other? Okay, the Metrobus, which is a bus, but it is one that is a dedicated one. So in some French cities they call it a trackless tram. The Metrobus, which is obviously the subject of the dispute at Stapleton Allotments, will make a vast improvement in terms of the north-south and east-west journeys. It's something that has been planned now for 9 years. I inherited it. I'm not pretending it's perfect, but it will massively improve the major routes. We will be spending about £200 million on Metro West, which is the rail network in and around Bristol, that will greatly improve communications within Bristol and commuting to Bristol. So over the next, up till 2020, you will see massive change and improvement. What I have to say is that First Bus have now put a really excellent managing director in charge recently, their best guy. I'm really impressed with his approach. They're going to be bringing more drivers. They will increase punctuality. They will be introducing smart ticketing, and hopefully we'll have less roadworks for waterworks delaying the buses. So there will be improvements.
Trains.
Yeah,
okay.
Buses and trains. Yeah.
So the next question, and this does tie into this as well, is Stephen Wickham. Stephen.
George, when will we know what the Winterstoke Road Metrobus Bridge will look like and how much will it cost us? And that's based on the Winterstoke Road Metrobus Bridge looking a lot like the Redcliffe flyover when the inspector last saw it, and it would be the one over the Portishead branch and be 7 metres in the air opposite the city ground.
I don't know the answer to that. Do you know when we'll know what the Winterstoke Road Metrobus Bridge will look like, Alistair? Alistair Cox.
Alistair, could you just introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Alistair Cox, Strategic City Transport Manager. In terms of what it looks like, the engineering plans should be on the website. If you go to the Travel West website and the projects, there's a tab which has got all the Metrobus business case, all their plans. In terms of visuals, I'm not sure when we will have visuals available, but we will consult and make those available. In terms of the cost for that bridge, I couldn't tell off the top of my head, but I'm happy to, again, make it available to you, and we can make it on the website. There'll be a breakdown in the business case of each element of the scheme, what it costs, and so there will be a cost estimate for that which we can happily share.
Yeah, it's just this has been a ghost for a very long time. The Redcliffe flyover analogy is very fair to what the inspector saw 2.5 years ago. And no one ever seems to have an answer as to whether its price is inflating and therefore whether we're going to have to pay 100% of that extra money, which was going to be about £4 million at the time of the inquiry.
I'll just say on the price, we're in contract. We have a contract price, which is a target price, and there's a mechanism in the contract for sharing the pain if costs go up and for sharing the gain if costs go down, so that we're locked into contract. We've got good contract management in place, and actually the contractor will share the penalties if costs go up as well, so they're incentivised to bring it in on price or actually below price. So it's in contract, and we're on it, and we'll make sure we manage it properly.
I'm always concerned with the aesthetics of this one. It's going to be very noticeable.
But the plans are on the website.
If they're not on the website, the engineering drawings on the website, in terms of the visualisations, they're not available yet, I don't think. We will make sure, again, there will be consultation, and they will be put out there. There's nothing to hide, and we'll certainly make sure it's all available. So.
Okay. Lovely.
And I'm on your side about and I'm on your side about aesthetics.
Okay. Thank you, Stephen. Okay, so the next question is from Margaret Elliott. I think it's Tredinek. Margaret? Oh, there at the end.
Hi, George.
Hello, Margaret.
Hello. So, having discussed at local councils the inequality experienced by city centre residents with respect to parking, is it true there's no room for movement on allowing residents greater priority when parking in the CPZ after 6 o'clock in the evening?
I don't know. I've asked officers to have a look at adjustments to the CPZ, and especially at the edges of the CPZ. For instance, St George's Road.
We live across the road.
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
I've asked officers to have a look at that.
Okay.
Because I do think you're in a particularly odd situation where you're betwixt and between. John, Toy, do you want to comment on that? And there are other areas on the edges of the CPZ where I think people are in a particularly difficult position.
Yeah, just to say that it is...
Sorry, could you just introduce yourself, please?
Hello, I'm John Toy. I'm stakeholder liaison for residence parking. And I get quite a lot of comments about the CPZ because we're building residence parking schemes all around the boundary. So it is recognised that the CPZ, which served its purpose with its original boundaries, when there was nothing out beyond it, needs to be reviewed. And that is likely to happen within the next year. There will be consultations on that. I mean, we won't sweep away the CPZ, but there are certainly some boundary issues that need to be looked at.
Okay. Does that answer any part of your question at all?
I think we were just really, because we've spoken to both the councillors in the area, and we were told basically by email, there's no room, so don't bother asking.
Well, they're wrong. I mean, I think there's a lot of mischief around, and you will get mischievous answers if you don't ask the right people. But John is the right person to ask, and you will get the straight answer. We definitely are reviewing some of the difficult situations like that where there are residential areas on the edge of the CPZ.
Absolutely, and when there are streets where some of the houses in the street are within the CPZ and have a different set of rules from the houses adjacent that are within a new RPS area, then clearly that's going to be looked at. It is a real consultation. We do listen. We've made many hundreds of changes to the residence parking schemes in response to consultation.
Okay. Maybe you can carry on that dialogue afterwards if you still need to. So, ladies and gentlemen, we've now got about 20 minutes to throw the questions from the floor up here. Thank you so much for all your questions. I'm really sorry if I didn't manage to get round to yours. I am going to ask if your question has been asked or if an associated question has been asked, please respect the views that a lot of people here haven't been able to ask their questions. So please give them a chance as well. And I'm going to ask for the floor to be open. Gentleman at the front.
Well, my name is David.
Would you like to just wait for the microphone? Sorry, I should have said that. Sorry.
My name is David Gould. I'm asking this question on behalf of Bristol for Democracy, which is a group here in Bristol. The 800th anniversary of the Magna Carta is coming up in June. Yeah. We'd like to do a big event, our biggest event yet. Now, people have talked about there being a democratic deficit in Bristol, a perceived democratic deficit. Would it be possible, could we talk about the possibility of devolving some token amount of power to a plebiscite in Bristol? So we would get hundreds of people involved and hopefully would get quite a few more than that, and the people would be chosen at random from that. Okay. Would there be some possibility for doing that?
Well, we do have a panel, actually, which is a sort of plebiscite, which does represent civil society. I can't remember how many people there are on it. 2,000 people. And we're constantly asking views of them and tracking changes of view. And so, to a certain extent, we're doing that. And I was talking about democracy this morning. I think I've just, in Glasgow, a couple of months ago, we had a big devolution debate amongst the 10 core cities, those Glasgow to Cardiff and the 8 principal English cities outside London. And what we did is we signed a charter for local freedom. And that wasn't just a charter about devolution of powers from Whitehall, Westminster to the city regions. It was also about devolution of power within the cities. And it's something I believe really strongly in. And I think that the deal to be done is that especially when you have a mayoral system, that you devolve as much power in terms of the non-strategic decision-making to the neighbourhoods. We have 14 neighbourhood partnerships. So to a certain extent, they are civil society, although the councillors, the 4 or 6 councillors, because they're 2 or 3 wards, typically each one of them, should be the democratically elected representatives of that. But that should be very much a local civil society organisation that is formally represented by the councillors. So I've said that absolutely I'm open to as much devolution of this decision-making as is practical being passed down. And I'm very much open, and I talked about e-democracy. I think that we will have the structure to have a much bigger panel in real terms when we do have this Bristol is Open network working, that will enable much quicker responses.
I'm not sure that people actually, if you just indulge me, could you just sum up what Bristol is Open, because you've talked about it two or three times.
Okay.
Just in a nutshell, for people like me who are a bit of a dunderhead with this.
Yeah. Okay. Just in a nutshell, Bristol is Open is a joint venture between us and the University of Bristol. It's a world-breaking project that will use the fact that we bought 100 miles of ducting from Reader Fusion when they moved out of Bristol for a very small sum, and I thank the people who took the decision to do that several years ago. We're using this for fibre connection right in a figure of 8 across the city, so it covers most areas of the city. If you're within 200 metres of that, you'll be able to link onto it through Wi-Fi. And that we'll be spreading the Wi-Fi right around the city. It means that the city is going to be much better connected.
Okay.
It means we'll be able to measure the city. We'll be able to measure the city much better.
The health implications of that.
Yes.
Okay.
You think it's healthy?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we have the wonderful thing about sharing this with the university, which is a health university. It's a teaching hospital, is that we've got all the ethics, the health, we have all the experience within the partnership.
Okay, so that was, I know that it was mentioned several times, and I'm sure that people out there thinking, what on earth is Bristol is Open? So that, just wanted to clarify that. The gentleman with his hand up on the left.
Good afternoon, George. And would everybody thank George, whether you love or hate him, he could hide away at home and not do this. So at least we can have a pop at him, can't we? Thank you, George. And that's not sucking up to you, by the way.
Thanks. Now the difficult question. Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to hit you with one now. As a Bristol company, and you know me well, for a year now, I have the solution to affordable housing, fully funded affordable housing. I'm getting nowhere with Bristol City Council. We don't need any handouts. We've got a range of fully tested affordable housing.
Okay. Could you get to your question, sir?
Yeah,
sorry.
Why is it so difficult to get through to Bristol and get them to work with us?
Okay, so on a general level, why can businesses approach Bristol City Council and get some response?
I don't know why it's been so difficult. Steve, are you aware of this?
I've been to see Tim Southall. It's gone nowhere. I've got Taylor Woodrow behind us. We've got the boss of...
Could you just give me the... give me the details.
I have, George. Four times.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
give me... Okay.
So, the man here...
Stuff that's said to me gets pushed all over the place, but we'll talk later.
Okay, now, I know you're really keen to ask your question. Is it a new question that hasn't been asked before, sir? Yes. Okay, in that case then, let's hear.
You. Now then, George.
Yes.
Okay. You and your fellow cyclists, it's a great thing. You're the Green City, I applaud it, and everything else. But when I say give us back our pavements, okay, or even bring a bylaw where you have a horn or a little bell, which you can get for 90p shots.
Yeah.
Yes? Yeah. That's all we want to know when they're coming out to hit us. Because I've been hit all joking aside. I've been hit 3 times and even threatened by one of your fellow cyclists, judging by 6'6", 18 stone, who said, and because there's ladies here, I'll delete the language, please, you asked, and I'm telling you how it stands.
Well, I asked for a question,
yes, but I'm telling you how it stands out.
I know, sir.
Wait a minute, for someone, just a minute, you're 76?
Sir, I'm
no,
just
you're not.
asking for
Have
your
you been
question.
Knocked down? Have you been knocked down yet?
Okay.
No.
Sir.
No.
Sir. Okay, so that was your question.
I have actually been knocked down.
The question is...
I've been knocked down by an individual who punched me.
Sorry, go on, your turn. By all means, give them carte blanche on our pavements, but at least give us some warning that they're coming to hit us.
Can I answer it?
Thank you.
I don't count myself as a cyclist. I'm a bloke on a bike. I'm not a fast cyclist, and I'm a very careful one. And I do think we are let down by some cyclists who are who don't give proper consideration to pedestrians on pavements, and I'm sorry about that. I have both a ping bell and a horn. I use the ping bell most of the time. I only use the horn when somebody's got their ears plugged listening to music.
So endorse it and bring a bylaw.
Well, yeah, bylaw. It would be a brilliant bylaw. I would love to do it.
Safety on the pavements. Thank you,
yeah.
George.
No, there is a brilliant.
Quickly,
okay, there are other things we can do, and I absolutely agree with you.
Thank you. I'm going to take a question from the lady here. If you can just wait for the microphone, please.
Hello, so I'm Ella Marshall. I'm actually one of the members of the Bristol City Youth Council and also Youth MP for Bristol.
Great.
This is related to Ellie's question earlier. It's firstly addressed to everyone in this room. You're obviously kind of involved in local politics, and I say the first step in re-engaging young people is talking to them about it, and don't beat them down if they question your views. Embrace it. That's my first thing to all of you, to your nieces, nephews, sons, daughters. Please do that when you go home tonight, especially considering it's 55 days until the general election. And secondly, to George, would you say that encouraging people to be engaged in politics is something that local authority can actually implement, considering there's so many academies, free schools, etc., or do you think this is something that needs to be taken to Whitehall predominantly?
When we talk about our schools, we talk about all our schools, and we have a much more... I mean, there was a time when the academies were formed, free schools were formed, that they all went a bit disparate. Now we've brought all the schools together. We have a really good conference of heads of schools, and I think it's something that we can encourage all the heads of schools to work with. And maybe we should start at the primary schools. But what we're not going to do is have party political influence over this. This has got to be about general interest in politics with a small p, and I think there's nothing but good that should come out of it. And from my experience of young people, I would have votes at 16.
I'm going to come to the gentleman in the blue top in the middle.
Hello, George. My question is similar to the man over there. On the way here, I was walking along Newfound Road, yes, and Haymarket Street. Haymarket Road. You know, along the heavy pedestrian zone, and I was almost hit a number of times by cyclists. Clearly, that's not a cyclist zone. Though I believe there is a cyclist zone somewhere nearby. What I would like to see is signage saying this isn't a cyclist zone. Here is where you'll have a cyclist zone, so that this doesn't happen. Because I don't want cyclists to say to me, well, I don't know where the cyclist, cycle path that goes through the centre is, when,
Okay, so George, better signage for cyclists, so the demarcation's really clear?
Obviously, in principle, yes. I haven't got a load of money to spend on more signs, but I do think that it is important that there is clarity. People understand where the shared areas are. For instance, the whole of the city centre promenade is a shared area, but not everybody understands that. And I think, but that means people, both pedestrians and cyclists, but particularly cyclists, should be considerate. I always think that, motorists, whoever is on the fastest means of transport should be the one that takes the greatest responsibility. So the car should take the greatest responsibility, the car and the bus. The cyclist should then take the greatest responsibility when it's in a shared space. But there are some ambiguous areas, and I think maybe we ought to have a special look at some of those ambiguous areas. It may be really simple things like stickers, a small round sticker on a lamppost.
Okay, so we're coming to the end of the session. I think I've probably got time now for 3 more questions. 3 people who've had their hand up are yourself, and yourself. So depending on that, we need to finish at past. So if I can ask the lady here first.
Hi, George. It's more of a comment than a question, but as a University of Bristol student and a Bristolian who's lived here all of my life, it deeply saddens me that when I come to meetings like this, because I followed your political career since you came to office in 2012, and it deeply saddens me that the sort of parochialness of the issues here is that people most get pent up about sodding residents' parking zones.
Madam, I know, just...
question?
Have you got a question?
Yeah, in terms of Bristol Arena, when is that going to be finished? That you predict it's going to be finished, and will the car parking spaces there be made available to the general public during the day?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, interesting you talk about the car parking after that. The arena will be completed by the end of 2017, which was always the plan. That is pretty good. That's within 5 years of me coming in. That is for a project that's basically a £90–100 million project, depending how you measure it, is pretty fast delivery through a process that is quite a complicated one. I don't want to provide a huge, great car park for the arena. I want to be clever about it. And funnily enough, I've been talking today about how we develop an app, which is what we're going to do. That means anybody coming to the city to any event, whether it's the arena, a football match or whatever, will be able to know where the nearest, the cheapest, the most expensive, the car parking space is, the distance to walk between that and wherever the event is. So I think it's a matter of using that technology. And funnily enough, Bristol is Open is part of that technology. Working with the university's supercomputer, it's being clever about how we reduce the amount of infrastructure we need in order to be able to give people what they want. So I think we'll find a different answer to the standard one of just building a huge, great car park.
Okay.
There are 10,000 car parking spaces within about 15 minutes walk of where the arena is going to be sited, so it's a matter of making most use of those.
Thank you. The lady here, and then if we've got time, so I'll come to you.
Hello, George. I'm Ruth Jackson. I run a charity in Bristol. We support families, many of whom live in very disadvantaged areas of the city, and a lot of very young families. And my question is, going back to your vision of utopia for Bristol, you mentioned children as being really, really important, and I would agree with that. And I would just like to ask you, though, what's going to be done about the children's centres? We work with a lot of them. I think they're some of the most fantastic places in the city. You can walk to them, you don't have to drive to them, and yet they're closing. Lots of them are closing, and the ones that are closing, the other ones are being given their reach areas. The reach areas are expanding massively, so the family support teams in those children's centres cannot provide the quality services to those families anymore, and we've seen this causing a lot of distress to both families and the teams that work in the children's centres. So I wondered if there was a strategy for dealing with that.
Thank you.
Well, the children's centres are really important. I'm really impressed with many of the children's centres in Bristol. We've got to make decisions about a broader strategy for Bristol rather than just living with exactly what we inherit. And a process was put in place well before I came into office that was looking at how we rationalise those children's centres. You say many are closing? I don't think many are closing. Are there?
Would you like to just wait for the microphone and then everyone can hear?
I was saying they're losing staff, and what's happened with the ones that we're working with, the few that have closed have been absorbed into others, which means, for example, St Paul's Children's Centre, we work with that children's centre a lot, have now got the hugest reach area, and they just cannot service all those families in their reach area. And now they're being judged on numbers and not the quality of services they're providing either, which I also don't think is a very good way of judging what the work that they do.
Well, I would agree if that was so. I don't believe that's entirely so. That they're simply judged on numbers?
That seems to be the most important thing. That seems to be taking precedent over the quality. I mean, I supply them with the data for the work we do, and it seems to be more concerned now about numbers of registering families of those centres rather than the quality of the work that they're actually providing, which I think is a shame because they do amazing work.
Okay, well, I absolutely don't believe it's just judged on numbers, but I will ask Mike to if he could flesh out that answer.
certainly no expert, but it is important to make more spaces available for children in the children's centres, and we are doing that. I don't think we're doing it at the cost of quality, but I'll certainly talk about that with my colleague who's responsible for children's services and children's centres. And again, I'm happy to share with you after the meeting or tomorrow. I don't know enough about the detail. In numbers are increasing, and I think you'd agree that's important, that more children are able to access children's centres. I don't think it's at the cost of quality, though.
I've made several visits to children's centres recently, and I've been hugely impressed by the quality of them and the devotion of the staff there and the involvement of some of the parents.
Okay, we've got 2 minutes. I did promise if we have 2 minutes left that you'd be able to ask your question. The gentleman here. If you could keep it brief, both of you, please, so we can finish on time.
We're in the middle of nature. There are lots of things about nature. We're having a bridge across the St Augustine's, across the Floating Harbour, and I've described that bridge, which we used to be called the Mobius Strip, as a swan killer. Right? Next week we've got a council meeting about the Central Area Local Plan, followed by the next day a development meeting in which that Mobius Strip bridge, which now turns at an acute angle, is going to be discussed. But it's already been decided the day before with the Central Area Plan, showing the bridge, showing 2 routes across Castle Park. So you're making decisions on one day that are going to bear on the decision making the next day on that bridge across the river, which, if I should say, that bridge was originally intended to be a logo on top of the building, moved down as a logo on the side of the building.
Can you very quickly get to the question so George can answer and everybody can leave on time?
You claim that if you had a lot of power, you'd be able to influence that decision. But you worked on this project prior to becoming a mayor. You advised the brewery. You worked on that.
Okay.
No, I didn't. I've never worked on that site.
Maybe this influence,
use your architectural influence and mayoral influence to say that bridge is just crass.
Can I say I've not seen the current plan for the bridge. The bridge, as far as I remember, was a condition of planning about 7 years ago, 6-7 years ago. What you should be clear, I should make absolutely clear, is the mayor has absolute no part in planning decision making. That is a quasi-judicial process that is decided by the planning committee, advised by the planning officers. And I have absolutely no part in that, unfortunately.
No, I'm not going to let this... Sir, I'm not going to let this descend. Sir, please.
Yeah.
Can I apologise to you with your hand up? You did put your hand up, and I completely forgot about you. I really apologise. Is this a very quick question? Yes, okay. I apologise for that.
This is in many ways a beautiful city. However, there are many hideous developments which have happened over the last 70 years or so. Yeah. George, you're an architect. What can you do to improve the aesthetic quality of the buildings that go up in Bristol in the future?
Thank you. Very quickly, George.
All I can do is encourage, and within where we have land ownership, we will do everything we can to use the influence that we have as landowners to improve. We are carrying out, as I said, the building of new council houses. I have interfered in that process to make sure that we have the proper advice, that we have local firms involved, and I believe that you will be seeing improved designs of council houses. We're at the other end of the scale. When we decided to have an arena, I decided, because that was within our... because it's our project, I decided that we would send it out to architectural competition. I'll be announcing the results of that next week. Okay. So where I've got influence, I am using it. Otherwise, I'm talking to all people who wish to develop in this city, some of the major developers, encouraging them to raise their standards. Because, for instance, if you're doing a new housing development, you might achieve higher densities, more homes, with better design. And I think rewarding better design is a really good way of achieving it.
Okay.
And,
I'm going to stop you on that. Thank you so much for bearing with that. I did want to get that question in because I know you did have your hand up, and we're 2 minutes over, so thank you very much for bearing with me. Very quickly, Jean Bonnet, who asked a question about Warm Up Bristol. If you want to make yourself... Jean, I'm told that Stephen here will be able to answer your question. And anybody who asked... who asked the question? Claudia and Gabriella about the buses. Alistair is your person, and they will be at the front. If you'd like to ask your questions directly to them, they'll be able to help. Thank you very much for coming along here, everybody. Really great questions. It was very hard to choose. I know that people get disappointed if I don't choose their questions, but I hope I brought in as many as I could. So thank you very much for coming along, and have a safe journey back. Thank you.